Hi, everyone. Welcome to the London School of English Live. This is our weekly series that allow you to improve your English and connect directly with our expert English language trainers. Today, you will learn a lot of practical tips and very useful business expressions for your work meetings and Zoom calls. Learning how to feel confident speaking English during work events can take a lot of time, and our goal today is to help you do it much faster. So already after this session, you can join your next Zoom call at work and feel more comfortable expressing your opinion, asking questions, and interacting with your colleagues and partners. For those of you who are new to our channel and our English learning community, the London School of English is the place where you can improve your English so that you can really get ahead in your international career and in life. You can learn excellent communication skills and gain confidence in our small groups where content is designed to fit your objectives. You can find a range of courses we offer, including business and professional English, general English, exam English, IELTS on our website, londonschool.com. We're also excited to say that we will be reopening our center in London on the 31st of August. So you can now study with us not only virtually, but also in face-to-face classes. And today, I'm so excited to welcome back Linda Stott, an expert English language trainer from our school who has a lot of experience in teaching business and professional English to international clients from around the world, from France to Japan, to Italy, to Brazil, to Spain, and even Myanmar. And we're also joined by Silvia Cupini from our sales team, who knows a lot about communicating in English with international clients and business partners. So Linda and Silvia, welcome. Great to have you here with us today. And Silvia, I know that even today you had a lot of meetings and Zoom calls. So what's your take on communicating with international clients and partners in English?
Yeah, well, I do have meetings, virtual meetings. Well, obviously, in the last few months, they were all virtual, but I do also get a lot of virtual meetings where when life was normal, and the meetings I have, they very different. You know, I may have more informal meetings with my team, and I have more formal meetings with some of our partners or corporates interested in our courses. So today I had an example of both of them. So I had several meetings with my team, and I had a very important formal meeting with a partner in Japan. And interestingly, it was all about, in fact, promoting our new Business and Professional 25 course. And they wanted to know exactly what was this 25 for. So the explanation on, the age range. So we will be accepting in this new course this people as, a professional as young as 25. So the whole presentation was quite interesting, and it was, in fact, we were using Zoom as a platform, and I thought it went really well. But interestingly, I used some of the expressions that Linda will present today. So yes, they're real live phrases. So yes, take notes; they're very useful. So Linda, back to you.
First of all, I just want to welcome everyone who's watching. I see Key. Good evening, Key and Tanya. Nice to see you again. Good. So let's begin. So I just want to say, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we're all having to do a lot more work online. So virtual meetings on platforms such as Zoom, Skype, Teams, etc., are much more common, and therefore the importance of effective communication is vital in order for a meeting to be managed successfully. There are, of course, different types of meetings, large formal meetings where you'll have a chairperson or someone leading the meeting, and then, of course, less formal or informal meetings, and, of course, meetings with customers or clients which won't be the same as a meeting with partners, as it will naturally not be the same with colleagues or between departments in your organization. In addition, we have to consider how different cultures approach or hold meetings in terms of formality and the use of language. So therefore, the language of meetings will vary quite a lot. I think the key is to be well prepared. And of course, because it's online, be ready for lots of unexpected interruptions. So as there's a wide range of language you could use, I've divided the useful expressions into possible stages in a meeting. So to begin, in certain meetings, you might be asked by the person chairing the meeting or leading the meeting to introduce yourself, or they might ask everyone attending to introduce themselves. And in addition, it's possible that you might have new people joining the meeting who need to be introduced, in which case these expressions could be useful. Please join me in welcoming Olga and Sylvia. I would like to introduce. It's a pleasure to welcome. So these are expressions that you could use for introductions. Well, of course, there are often technical issues when you are online. A very good video that you could, a YouTube video that you could watch is Trip and Tyler. And it's a funny and humorous look at the reality of what really happens in an online meeting. So I would suggest go and have a look at that just to give you confidence about the fact that things do go wrong and how to manage that. So some useful language for managing these online issues that come up could be something like this. Sorry, but I can't hear or see you. And then you might say, can you see me or hear me now? Perhaps if you make some changes. Is that okay or better now? Sorry, I can see you, but I can't hear you. I'm just going to log off and log in again. Could you give me a moment while I try to fix? And then obviously you fill it in with whatever it is that you're trying to fix. I'm going to switch off my video and see if that helps. Somebody might make a suggestion and say to you, perhaps you could try closing your background applications. It seems we have lost John. Of course, it doesn't mean that he's disappeared, but that he's disappeared on your screen. You've lost John. He's suddenly disappeared off your screen in the meeting. And then you could also say, Jack's screen has frozen. I had that earlier this week when I was teaching a student, and suddenly the screen went like that, and I wasn't quite sure whether he was a bit confused or whether he was thinking about something, but in actual fact, his screen was frozen. I couldn't actually communicate with him. When you have these kind of problems, it might be useful to send a chat message, in which case you could say, I'll send Jack a chat message. Other polite language is, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. I'm sorry, I'm having difficulties with. So moving on to opening or starting a meeting, which usually is the role of the chairperson in the meeting. So these expressions could be useful. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. Shall we begin? So these expressions, we looked at this in the last session about negotiations, the use of these modal verbs that help us to sound far more polite and formal. So another expression would be, if we're all here, let's get started, or let's start the meeting, shall we? Okay, is everybody here? Who are we waiting for? I think we'll make a start without them. So if everyone's not there, perhaps you might decide to go ahead. I'd just like to say hello to Jafran, Inigo, Elsie, Vera. Apologies if I've missed out your name, but those are the ones I could see at the moment, just to welcome you and thrilled to have you here with us today. So, when we start the meeting, it's quite important that you agree on the ground rules. So ground rules would be contributions. How do you want people in the meeting to contribute? The timing of the meeting and the decision-making process. And this would probably be the chairperson's role to say these statements. So things such as the meeting is due to finish at, so the preposition at, and then whatever time. We may need to vote on item 5, or if we can't get a unanimous decision, we will have to take a vote. We've got a lot to get through this morning or this afternoon, so could we stick to the agenda, please? Of course, the next process will be that you would want to state the topic or the agenda for the meeting to establish why the meeting is being held. It's always useful to do this so everyone is clear about what's going to follow. And you could say things like, I've called this meeting in order to. Has everyone received a copy of the agenda? Of course, no one's going to say no, but it's a useful phrase to use. There are 3 items on the agenda. First of all, secondly, and finally. So the first item on the agenda is the aim or purpose of today's meeting is to reach a decision on. Quite useful, those expressions, and be careful about those prepositions, making sure that you're using the right prepositions. Of course, a lot of the time in meetings, you need to get input from people. You want to find out their opinion. You also want to encourage discussion and participation in those meetings. So useful expressions could be, what's your opinion on? How do you feel about? I'd like to get your feedback on. What are your views on? Jack, can we get your input on? Could I just ask you? Now, remember, the use of just in this expression gives the listener the message that you are not asking them to deal with something difficult or time-consuming, and that it's not going to be a problem. So if I said, could I just ask you, I'm not feeling that I'm going to demand a lot of time and attention. It means I need to just ask you this. It's not going to be a massive problem. And then, of course, in meetings, you often need to give your opinion. So if you want to show that you feel strongly about something, you could use these expressions. I strongly believe that. I'm convinced that. I have no doubt whatsoever that. Otherwise, you might simply say, I think, believe, or feel that. In my opinion, I'm in favor of. I believe our best course of action is. Those should work quite nicely. When you want to react positively or negatively to other people's opinions, ideas, or proposals, in other words, language for agreeing or disagreeing, which could be useful. So for strong agreement, you could say something like this. I totally agree. Of course, if the opposite is true, then you might say, I'm sorry. Remember, in our last session, we mentioned that, or I mentioned the use of the sorry softens bad news. So you would say, I'm sorry, but I completely disagree. This next expression, I couldn't agree more. Now, this expression is often confusing because of the use of the negative modal verb couldn't. You might think it shows disagreement. But if we look at the end of the sentence, agree more, it's clear that this person strongly agrees with you. I couldn't agree more. Strong agreement. Of course, if you don't agree, you could say, I'm sorry, but I don't agree with that. Again, the use of the softener, I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. Otherwise, you would just say, you're absolutely right. Good point. I agree with you wholeheartedly. For those of you that don't know the meaning of this word wholeheartedly, your homework, since I'm a teacher, so your homework is to go to an English dictionary and look up the meaning of this word wholeheartedly. But it's a beautiful expression and it means you agree completely. So otherwise, you could use these expressions. That's exactly how I see it. Negatively, unfortunately, nice language to soften. Unfortunately, I see it differently. I'm with Jack on this. Jack's a busy man. He's featuring all over the place. I'm with Jack on this. I agree. If it's not that you agree, I'm afraid, nice softening language, I'm afraid I can't agree with you on that. Remember that it's a bit too direct and impolite to say, I'm afraid I disagree. It's much better to use this other way to say, I'm afraid I can't agree with you on that. It sounds much softer and less direct. When you partially agree with someone, these expressions could be useful. So, I agree with you up to a point, but. So it means you agree with some of the things they've said, but not all of them. I agree with you up to a point, but. And the next one, I agree with you in principle, but. And this means that you agree with the theory or the idea that the person's putting forward, but perhaps you don't agree with the practice or the doing of it. I agree with you in principle, but. And then, of course, during a meeting, you want to show that you're interested and you're listening and you're participating. So language that could be useful to show interest. I see. Oh, really? That's interesting. I get your point. I see what you mean. Of course, the biggest problem when we're in meetings, and especially these virtual meetings, you're dealing with different nationalities, different accents. So when you want to ask someone to repeat what they've said, these might be useful. I'm afraid I didn't quite catch that. Sorry, could you repeat that, please? And I'm not sure I follow your point about. I'm not quite with you. That could be useful. And then when you want to clarify what they've said, you could say, so let me check if I've understood you correctly. Are you saying that would be impossible or difficult? Another way to clarify is to say, am I correct in thinking that we will be opening the school on the 31st of August? Yes, we are opening on the 31st of August. You have absolutely understood me correctly. Another option would be, can you expand on that? What exactly have you in mind? Did you have in mind? Another expression, you are offering 20% now and then 10% on completion. Is that right? So I think a lot of the time when people don't understand something that somebody said, the natural default expression is, I don't understand. I don't understand. And that's not really useful, because what it does is it brings down your confidence because you're constantly saying it, and it's not positive. It doesn't build up confidence. So I think in order to help you with your confidence, it's probably much better to actually put to the person what you think you heard, and for them to clarify if it's not correct. Remember that if you do understand it correctly, it boosts your confidence and you feel so much better, and it's just a much more useful way. So I'll give it to you again. You're offering 20% now and then 10% on completion. Is that right? Another useful expression for this category would be, could you be a little more precise? Now, we often use these softeners, a little more precise. It just sounds a lot better using these softeners. Or you could say, could you be a bit more precise, please? Perhaps I should make that clearer by saying, and then you add in what you want to add. So, what you are saying is, and again, tell the person what you've heard. It can also help them, because if they feel that you're not getting what they're saying, they might reduce or lower their level of English or speak slower, etc. So this expression can help you with many things. And then the final one in this category, perhaps I'm not making myself clear. What I mean is, if you want to clarify something that somebody has misunderstood. Now, this is a really important point, and it's got to do with different cultures. Some cultures, when you're interrupting, have no problem with you just shouting and saying your point. But in order to be polite in a formal diplomatic situation, these phrases, these expressions could help you. Can I raise a point here? I'd like to come in here, if I may, and it doesn't mean that you want to open the door and come in or enter into some other virtual room, but it means that you would like to interrupt. So I'll give it to you again. I'd like to come in here, if I may. Can I come in here? Can I interrupt? Can I come in here? Actually, while we're on the subject of adding your interruption, whatever it is that you want to interrupt with. And the final one in this category, could I add something here? These expressions are much more useful in getting someone's attention rather than shouting your ideas across. Of course, the chairperson needs to control the meeting and make sure that everything's going accordingly, and that the agenda, the items on the agenda are adhered to. So these could be useful expressions. If nobody has anything else to add, let's move on to the next item. This is a good one. So when you want to to notify the participants in a meeting that you're on a time constraint, you could say something like, we're running short on time, or we are running out of time, so let's move on. I'd like to skip item 2 and go directly to item 3. Can we move on to, can we leave that until later and go on to? Of course, sometimes you need to give control over to somebody else in the meeting. And in this sense, you could say, I'd like to hand it over to Jack, who is going to lead the next point. So often in a meeting, things get quite heated. Discussions go on during the meeting, and very often things go off topic. You have an agenda, but you go off topic and start talking about something else. And this is where the chairperson needs this language to bring the discussion back to the main point. And this could be useful. I'm afraid that's outside the scope of this meeting. I think we're getting off topic. We'd better save that for another meeting. So, of course, every meeting needs to be closed and there needs to be a summary so that everybody knows what they're doing. Perhaps the chairperson might nominate certain people who have certain tasks that they will need to do. So, closing or summarizing the meeting. Before we close, let me just summarize the main points. To sum up, and also I'll go over the main points. Shall I? Nice and polite. A few last ones. Okay, let's summarize. Let's sum up. We have agreed to. So it's quite useful to state what you have achieved in the meeting. So we've agreed to, or in conclusion, or to conclude, we have decided to, and then whatever your decision has, the decision that you've made. Very often in meetings, you decide to meet on another occasion, perhaps because not everything has been concluded. And you could say our next meeting will be on the 25th of August. So, of course, if there's no scheduled exact meeting, you could say, I'll let you know the date of our next meeting. Of course, you've now summarized, but you need to finish the meeting and thank everybody. So thank you all for attending. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your time. And this is my most favorite one. Thank you for a constructive and fruitful meeting. Such a positive ending to a meeting. And that's it. So that's it for me. So any questions, any things that anybody would like to ask? Let's have a look. Let's move on to
Thank you very much, Linda, and apologies for little glitches that you might see on the screens right now, but we've got everyone here. Thank you.
Jose's made an interesting point. He says there's a challenge, with cultural. Hi, Jose, by the way. There is a challenge with cultural approaches. Some countries or cultures have a style more direct, others are more polite. In my view, it is better to be more polite to avoid any misunderstanding. You're absolutely right, Jose. I was saying in the beginning of the live stream that we have to consider different cultures and different approaches. And you're absolutely right. Some cultures are much more direct. And to be safe and to be sure that you're not offending anybody or that you're not alienating anybody, always go with the polite, formal option. 100%, Jose. Yes.
Yeah. And in fact, Sylvia, we just before we dive into the questions, Sylvia and Linda just wanted to call out a few names from our viewers and our English language community. Those people who are joining us today. We've got people who we've already seen on many live streams. For example, Tanya. Welcome, Tanya. And
nice to see you.
Ki and Jufran, Ali. There's so many of you. It's really great to see you. And also, we've got people who are here with us for the first time. So also welcome. We see that Vera Arsentiva is joining us for the first time. And we've got Dingy joining us for the first time. Meire Raquel, we seeing for the first time. So that's Elsie Castro. So all of you, welcome. It's really great to have you here. And just Linda, it's great that you pulled out the comment from Jose, because actually it seems that communicating in meetings is becoming more and more important for a lot of our viewers. We've commented, we had comments from Ki and Vera and Jufran, who are saying that they now, after COVID, actually have many more meetings.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, so Linda, you mentioned some intercultural aspects. Sylvia, you work a lot with people from all over the world and different cultures. Some of them are direct, some of them are indirect. What's your experience with this, and what would you advise to our English language community as well?
Yeah, I guess at the beginning, well, as I said, I've always had virtual meetings, so I'm personally quite used to, and some of the partners we work with are quite familiar with it. But obviously, since the lockdown, it was the only way of having meetings. So I guess for many, there was readjusting to the difference. If for some reason you feel that the meeting is different. Before going live, actually, with Linda, we were talking about the lack of body language, and how sometimes not being able to see someone's body, you may feel like, oh, I'm not quite certain of the person's reaction. And I think once you adjust to that, perhaps things get easier. But in terms of intercultural, I guess the issues that Jose was raising, they happen whether it's virtual or face to face.
Absolutely.
So going into a meeting, as you correctly said, if you do not know the people in there, going with the idea of communicating in the most formal way is the best approach. And then obviously it's much easier to relax once, if it is the case to do so.
Yeah. But I think also, I think we were talking about it earlier, Olga and Sylvia, about how a lot of this language you would use anywhere in meetings, whether it's virtual or face to face. But I think the key difference, and I think we've all experienced it, and I'm sure all of you who are watching out there will agree, that there are so many issues that happen with technology that kind of create a lot more stress during a meeting to keep it all together. If you're the chairperson, or even if you're participating, screens get frozen, audio goes, you lose the connection. You've got to come back into the meeting. So I think the key thing really is that if you what we say, effective communication is vital, because knowing exactly how to communicate what's going on when these breakdowns happen, and they are going to happen, it's a reality. I think it's important to have that language so you can communicate effectively. I think it is important.
Yeah, I think you raise a really interesting point. And actually, what I noticed that virtually, meetings tend to be a little bit more, much more on time, more, as you said, effective, because things may go wrong. So you keep to the agenda. So you stick to that because your timing is slightly different. Whereas sometimes meeting can be interrupted with a cup of coffee, a little chat, and there may be much longer meeting. Whereas, technical issues, okay, let me get to the point straight and direct, but not direct in a negative way, but more I agree. So I'm all up for virtual meetings, to be honest.
I just
do you find, because obviously I'm not having meetings, but obviously I'm doing lessons and things like that, which is not quite a meeting format, but do you find that it's more intense online, virtually?
I definitely have to be more prepared. I agree with you, because there is the less distraction of the face-to-face, whether, as I said, it's the cup of tea or, oh, please come in, or it feels different. So I'm definitely need to be more prepared. But you have your desk. So in a way, it's easier. You have your monitor. So it's easier to manage your notes, at least personally, to manage my notes much better. So if you have a good understanding of how to use certain platforms, you can. But yes, I agree. You definitely need to be, I think, more prepared.
Yeah, and also I would imagine it's a little bit more intense, because there you are, your face is on that screen for the whole period of that meeting. And maybe if you're in an actual meeting, you might look down at your notepad and maybe doodle a little bit, or write some notes, or whatever it actually is. But when you're on the screen, it's a lot more intense. You really need to. Would you agree with that?
And then everybody can see each of you. So if you're looking down, or for whatever reason you disappear from your box, that's very true.
Yeah.
I just want to call out a few more people that commented. It's so lovely to see our alumni commenting. Birgit, actually,
yes, hi, Birgit.
great to see you here. And in fact, we've got some more videos, and this new video with Birgit in it related to business and professional English.
Yes.
Birgit, fantastic.
I know.
You joining.
I remember Birgit really well.
Yeah.
At Tottenham Park.
I do too.
Yeah. Everybody remembers Birgit. Such a lovely person. Hi,
and
Birgit.
we've got Jose. That's fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much, Jose.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
We'll let Johnny know. Don't worry.
Yeah. Elizabeth Mazur studied with us in 2018. That's really great to see alumni. And then we have new faces as well. So we have Murilo Furlan who's joining us. And then also we've got people from all over the world. We've got Fidel Jorge from Angola. Fantastic.
Hi, Fidel.
Wow,
all the way from Angola.
Yeah,
gee
amazing.
whiz.
That's really good. So just another question, because I'm pretty much mindful about the time.
Yes.
But one of the very specific questions that came from Ricardo Bertolotto Esquivel. So Linda, it's the language question, focus and concentrate on.
I think we need to... Yeah, I think we need to be careful about that, because you wouldn't, in a meeting, I don't know, Sylvia, how would you feel if I said, Sylvia, you need to focus on this? It's a little bit too, it kind of gives you're calling out somebody and you're telling them in the meeting, you've got to do this. And I think culturally, in terms of English culture, it's not something that we would do, because in a sense, you're saying to the person, you're not doing this and you better do it. And that's something that probably we would, the chairperson or whoever is managing the meeting might have a private chat to somebody outside of the meeting and say, I noticed that, you weren't focusing, or you need to concentrate, etc. I don't think that's necessarily something you would use in the meeting, or do you have a different view, Sylvia?
No, what there was some of the language you presented was, and I don't know whether Ricardo perhaps meant that you used the phrase stick. Let's stick to this point, or
let's stick to this point. Yes, stick to the agenda.
So perhaps the use of let's, it makes it less to one person in particular, but is addressed to the all.
Good point.
People.
Very good point. Yes. Let's focus on, or let's concentrate. Yes, absolutely.
I think that's what he meant. Let's focus on point 2 of the agenda.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good point. Very good point. Yes.
And it actually reminds me of another question that we had earlier. I'm not sure if I can find it at the moment, but this was about kind of the language divide between native English speakers and those for whom English is a second language. So there's a lot of things that people don't really know about this very kind of this intricate meanings of the words. So Linda and Sylvia, in your experience, what is the best way to learn how to be more aware of those intricate intercultural aspects? Is this just practicing, or is this something that people can learn in a classroom, or what would be your advice?
Let's see, Linda, if we have the same opinion. You go first.
Well, first of all, I think language-wise, in terms of culture, I think it's quite important to do a course, or you need to read up or do research about it. But I think doing a course really does help. So a lot of the business courses that we do, we talk a lot about culture, and we usually go around in the room, and we ask people, how would you say it if you were holding a meeting? And then we look at how we would do it in an English way. And I think the other key thing is to join an intercultural course, or to participate in an intercultural course. Sometimes you can do a lot of these things on your own, but in my experience, not just with English language, but with anything in life, sometimes you get to a point where you actually do need to study or do a course in order to become a kind of not quite an expert on it, but to become more skilled or better at it. And that's kind of my opinion.
Yeah, no, totally. I also think that obviously the intercultural part, to be better able to interact with whatever culture, is also important to visit the place and to really get,
Full
to be
immersion.
there. Exactly. And what I found personally, and having traveled a lot, but going with somebody who then pointed things out to me and made me notice, like it would be, for example, a mini course, that obviously helped so much more, and I was much quicker to interact with the local. So yes, so definitely both. So even in terms of linguistically, if you deal a lot with the companies in the UK, then coming to the UK, it'll help you, like, oh right, okay, now I understand better why they say that, why they're so polite, how people interact also physically. So yeah.
Great. Just calling out more names, more comments from Daniela, Erdal, Santiago, Ricardo. Great to hear from you. And we are just wrapping up. So unfortunately, we only have so much of the time. But just before we do, I want to ask one more question from Tanya. And this question, Linda, Sylvia, if you can just give just a few tips on what can be done about this. Is Tanya is asking us, what do you do when you feel anxious in meetings, and for example, speaking English in meetings? What would be your top 2 tips, Linda and Sylvia?
Put your 2 feet on the ground.
Great idea.
Put your hand here like that, and just know that you're okay. You're successful in your own right, and don't worry about the English, because as I've said before, we're all human beings and we naturally want to help each other and support each other. And if you just are confident, as you've said before, Tanya, confidence is so important. But I think the key thing is to stay grounded, stay focused, and just remember that you are successful without English. Of course, with English, you'll be more successful, but don't let that trip you up and stop you from being the person that you normally are.
Thank you, Linda. That's great tips.
I would say, as a non-native speaker myself, Tanya, what I would do is really stop, breathe, and talk slowly.
Absolutely key, Sylvia.
Because it's actually very beautiful when people slow down. And this is not a non-native thing. Many native speakers and very good speakers actually slow down. And that going a little slower give your brain a little bit that extra time to think better. So really, like a little breath and then speak slowly, I think would do.
Yeah, because nobody will say when you speak slowly, oh my gosh, her English is terrible, she speaks so slowly. No, they're more likely to say, wow, her English is, or his English is so good. You can understand everything that they say. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. These are really great tips, and I think a good reminder for all of us to breathe, put our both feet on the feet, and then just believe in ourselves.
Absolutely.
So we need to wrap up, but of course, as always, if you've got any questions about our courses or about how you can improve your English, then don't hesitate to either contact us after the event at this email, clients@londonschool.com, or find out more about our courses, whether that's business and professional English courses or general English courses, at on our website, www.londonschool.com. And we've got some really good, some more really useful content coming up for you. So next week, if you find that you have trouble with your telephone English skills, then do put this in your calendar on Thursday at 5:30 London time. Linda will be presenting her powerful advice on how to feel confident and at ease and relaxed in your telephone calls.
I look forward to seeing you all then.
Yeah, definitely. And so Linda, Sylvia, thank you very much for all of your contribution, and thank you very much for all of the comments and wonderful questions from our alumni and from new people in our English learning community. We hope to see you very soon, and stay well, stay safe, and Linda, I guess
keep learning.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.